For years, the Boeing 747 appeared to be heading toward a quiet and predictable retirement, with airlines around the world rapidly replacing the iconic quadjet with newer twin-engine aircraft that burned less fuel and required fewer crew members to operate on long-haul routes. So in this video, we take a look at how retired Boeing 747s unexpectedly became some of the most sought-after freighters in America, why cargo airlines began pulling aircraft back out of desert storage, and why the legendary jumbo jet may still have a long future ahead of it despite the end of its passenger career. And be sure to check out Simpleflying's flight tracker. From live alerts and data on commercial, military and government flights, it goes way beyond your standard tracker. It was built specifically for avgeeks, free and live, right at your fingertips. The Boeing 747 has always occupied a unique place in commercial aviation because it was designed around sheer scale, with early versions capable of carrying hundreds of passengers, while later freighter versions became some of the most capable cargo aircraft ever built. Even as passenger airlines shifted toward efficient twin jets like the Boeing 787 and Airbus A350, the Boeing 747 retained one enormous advantage that no modern twin-engine aircraft could fully replace: volume. Cargo airlines discovered that the aircraft's cavernous main deck remained ideal for transporting machinery, automotive parts, industrial equipment, and oversized freight that simply could not fit inside smaller, wide-body freighters such as the Boeing 767-300F. The aircraft's upward-opening nose door on dedicated freighter variants became especially valuable for outsized cargo operations, allowing loading crews to insert freight directly into the fuselage without the dimensional restrictions found on side-loading aircraft. The retirement wave that hit passenger airlines during the early 2020s unexpectedly created a huge supply of low-cost Boeing 747 aircraft, many of which still had years of structural life remaining. Instead of being dismantled immediately for parts, numerous aircraft were sent into long-term desert storage facilities, where dry climates slowed corrosion and preserved the aircraft in recoverable condition. Aircraft storage facilities in places like Marana, Victorville and Mojave became central to the Boeing 747's unexpected revival because these desert boneyards were designed not simply for scrapping aircraft, but also for preserving them for potential future use. While the term boneyard often suggests final retirement, many aircraft stored there remain in a carefully maintained condition that allows operators to reactivate them years later. When a Boeing 747 arrives at one of these facilities, engineers perform preservation procedures that protect engines, avionics, hydraulics, and flight surfaces from environmental damage. Fuel systems are drained or stabilized, engines are covered, and critical components are periodically inspected while the aircraft sits inactive in the desert heat. Depending on the level of storage selected by the owner, some aircraft can theoretically return to service within weeks, while others require months of extensive maintenance work. The pandemic years dramatically expanded the number of aircraft entering storage, including dozens of Boeing 747s from carriers that permanently exited the type. Although it was widely assumed at the time that the majority would eventually be dismantled for spare parts, freight demand changed the economics entirely. Cargo operators began examining stored aircraft as potential additions to their fleets. The closure of Boeing's 747 production line only intensified interest in the surviving fleet, since operators recognized that every stored aircraft represented a finite resource. One of the most important factors behind the Boeing 747's cargo resurgence was the development of passenger-to-cargo conversions, which allowed older airline aircraft to begin entirely new careers, transporting cargo instead of travelers. During a conversion process, the aircraft's passenger interior is almost completely removed, including seats, overhead bins, galleys, and cabin furnishings. Engineers then reinforce sections of the floor structure to handle concentrated cargo loads, while installing large side cargo doors and specialized handling systems that allow pallets and containers to move efficiently through the fuselage. Although these modifications require substantial investment, the final product often costs significantly less than purchasing a newly built freighter. The timing of these conversions also aligned with dramatic changes in global shipping patterns. Online retail companies increasingly relied on overnight logistics networks capable of moving enormous quantities of goods between continents, while manufacturers sought fast transportation options for supply chain disruptions that became common during the early 2020s. The Boeing 747's size gave operators flexibility that smaller freighters could not always match, and a single aircraft could transport huge amounts of cargo across long distances without refueling stops, making it ideal for high-volume international freight routes linking Asia, Europe, and North America. Despite advances in newer cargo aircraft, US cargo operators continue relying heavily on the Boeing 747 because few alternatives can duplicate its combination of payload, range, and operational flexibility. Major operators, including Atlas Air and Kalita Air, still use large fleets of 747 freighters across global cargo routes, carrying everything from e-commerce shipments to military equipment and oversized industrial machinery. When shipping bottlenecks at ports forced companies to move urgent cargo by air instead of sea freight, the Boeing 747's enormous capacity allowed operators to transport high volumes of goods quickly between continents. Military charter work has also contributed to the aircraft's continued relevance in the US. The Department of Defense frequently contracts civilian cargo operators to move helicopters, armored vehicles, engines, and humanitarian aid supplies worldwide, and the Boeing 747 remains one of the few aircraft capable of handling these missions efficiently. Unlike passenger airlines, cargo operators often prioritize payload over fuel efficiency, especially on routes where demand for freight space remains exceptionally high. While twin-engine freighters consume less fuel overall, they may require additional flights to transport the same amount of cargo that a single Boeing 747 can carry. Decades of operational experience created an enormous maintenance infrastructure around the Boeing 747, with mechanics, spare parts suppliers, and overhaul facilities spread throughout the aviation industry. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Boeing 747's modern resurgence has been the number of retired passenger aircraft that have unexpectedly returned to active operations after years in storage. Several airlines and governments have recently sought older 747s for specialized transport missions. In some cases, airlines that previously grounded the type entirely later discovered renewed demand for high-capacity operations, especially on routes where passenger volumes rebounded faster than expected. Some operators purchased retired aircraft specifically to support freight growth, often using former passenger aircraft as temporary cargo aircraft before full conversion programs could be completed. Governments have also continued showing interest in the type. The US Air Force still relies on Boeing 747 variants for presidential transport, while additional aircraft acquired from foreign operators have been used for training and spare parts support connected to the delayed replacement of the Air Force One program. Internationally, some carriers reactivated stored aircraft because sanctions, fleet shortages, or supply chain problems limited access to newer planes. The reactivation process itself can be extraordinarily complex, as aircraft emerging from long-term storage require detailed inspections, engine overhauls, software updates, corrosion checks, and extensive test flights before they can carry cargo or passengers again. Depending on the aircraft's condition, the work can take several months and cost millions of dollars. The continuing expansion of global e-commerce networks ensures that demand for high-capacity freighters will likely remain strong, especially on long-haul routes linking manufacturing centers with major consumer markets. While environmental regulations and fuel costs will gradually pressure older aircraft fleets, operators still view the Boeing 747 as highly effective for missions involving heavy or oversized freight. Even older 747-400 freighters continue finding work because cargo aviation traditionally keeps aircraft flying much longer than passenger airlines do, as freighter operators are often willing to accept higher operating costs if an aircraft can reliably generate strong cargo revenue, particularly during peak shipping seasons. The closure of Boeing's production line may ultimately strengthen the aircraft's long-term value because it guarantees that surviving airframes are finite in number. As a result, aircraft once written off as obsolete passenger relics have become some of the most important workhorses in global cargo aviation, proving that retirement for the Boeing 747 was never quite as final as many people assumed. What do you think? Will the Boeing 747 remain a major force in cargo aviation for decades to come, or will newer freighters eventually take over its role? Let us know by leaving a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more aviation content. See you next time. In addition to our daily YouTube videos, Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles and a podcast every week. Visit simpleflying.com.